Hello and welcome to Let's Review. Right, this week I'm going to talk about a PS3 game. Now, I've done this before and it does have one fairly significant advantage over talking about a PC game. Namely, I'm a lot less likely to give myself a hernia, since it is once again time to go digging in the crate. The early days of the PS3 were a little on the rough side. That's certainly not uncommon for a new console. In fact, it's happened to pretty much every console that's ever been released. However, it didn't take a hideous amount of time before the PS3 started getting some really good solid games. And the game I'm talking about today was one of those early successes. Sold a lot of copies, was very well received, and it kicked off a reasonably solid franchise. A franchise based on the human race being totally buggered. Ladies and gentlemen, Resistance: Fall of Man. There really is nothing quite like giving away things in the title, is there? Nope. Resistance uses the classic idea of an alternate history. In this case, a world where the Second World War never happened. The world remained largely peaceful, up until the point at which Russia decided to cut itself off. It erected a massive wall across its entire border with the rest of Europe and cut off all lines of communication. By any chance, did they try and make Mexico pay for it? I doubt it. Russia remained silent for several years, until one day in the late 1940s, the Chimera swept across Europe. The Chimera are an unrelenting force. Humans modified by the Chimeran virus into strange creatures that wield highly advanced and clearly alien weaponry, and they sweep across Europe in a matter of months, taking out all defence with little or no opposition, and they're only halted by one thing: the English Channel. That thing really does stop everyone, doesn't it? Napoleon, Hitler, the Spanish, aliens. It's useful. Unfortunately, in this case, it isn't enough, as the Chimera eventually just tunnel under the Channel and swarm the UK much as they did the rest of Europe, with the UK ultimately falling to them. Fall of Man is set a couple of years after that, when the Americans, who, as we know, show up late to every war, with the exception of the ones they start themselves, finally get their act together and send a relief force to assist the UK, which is led by a massive aerial landing, which gets obliterated. Really? Almost completely, yeah. I know of only one survivor of the entire initial American force, Ranger Sergeant Nathan Hale, who is, of course, our player character. He ends up teaming up with the British Resistance and plays an integral part in helping them fight back against the Chimera. Unfortunately, Hale is actually probably the weakest aspect of this game, because he has all of about 10 lines, and they're all delivered in a really dull monotone. Is that not meant to help you embody him? Probably, but honestly, if that was the case, they should have just left him completely mute. Thankfully, the rest of the cast are much, much better. The game is actually narrated by Captain Rachel Parker, who's one of the highest ranking members of the Resistance left alive, and is a very skilled combat leader, and overall is just the most interesting character in the game. Since she acts as a narrator, the whole thing actually has the feel of somebody's war memoir, which actually works very well for it, and it means that the characters don't get bogged down dealing with lots of expositionary dialogue, because she just gives you all the exposition you need in between missions. That sentence feels a tad contradictory? Maybe, but I know what I meant, and that's the important thing. You also encounter Lieutenant Stephen Cartwright, who I love because he really is just your standard, stiff upper lip British Royal Marine Commando, but he's got a bit of a biting sense of humour, and frankly, he's just fun to be around a lot of the time. These two are arguably the main characters of the game, regardless of Hale's role as the player character. And frankly, they do have just enough personality between them to carry it, though a few more minor characters would definitely have been nice, and I'm not just talking about the guys who last for half a mission and then get horribly killed. which does happen a lot, to be fair. Gameplay-wise, it's actually a fairly standard shooter, albeit a well-polished one, and the alien nature of the Chimera does lead to a fairly interesting weapons mix.
I assume by that you mean it's a mix of mid-20th century weaponry with a few alien guns thrown in for good measure.
Yes, but unlike a lot of similar games, the alien guns aren't just regular human guns that shoot light instead of bullets. They are very different and unique feeling, and they all have an interesting secondary fire mode. So the main Chimeran rifle, for example, has a secondary fire mode that tags an enemy, and then causes all your shots to home in on them, even if they're behind cover or whatever, which is very, very useful for homing fire in on some of the bigger targets. You've also got the auger rifle, for example, which shoots clean through cover, and is actually very, very annoying if you've got 2 or 3 guys coming at you with them, but is ruinous fun to play with once you get the opportunity. And that summarizes a lot of the Chimeran weapons. They've got a basic idea that's just a little bit different and a little bit interesting, and they ran with it and did something fun. The nature of the Chimera themselves also leads to a pretty decent amount of enemy variety.
I thought you said that they were all diseased humans.
Oh, they are, but the Chimeran virus ignores anything boring, like, science that makes sense, and as a result, different strains of it will have radically different effects on people, allowing them to become either standard soldiers or giant flying monsters, or pretty much anything in between. And ultimately, that's kind of why this game works. It's fun. It's also a little frustrating at times, if I'm honest. The difficulty curve, especially near the beginning, is a little off, I think. But honestly, it's hardly a deal breaker, and it's definitely a fun, enjoyable experience. Plus, it's set in my own home country, which is always nice to see.
You like seeing your own cities bombed and destroyed, then?
Hey, I'm a northerner. We love seeing London gets destroyed. It's one of our favourite things. Let's face it, number of times I've seen Big Ben get blown up in various programmes. Never get sick of it. It's always fun. Resistance Fall of Man was a damn solid game, and it spawned a reasonable franchise with a disappointing follow-up game and a vastly superior spin-off game, which I will talk about at some point in the future. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a university that's somehow built around mech fighting to get back to. I will see you later.